Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we will be talking about SEC Media Days. Football season is right around the corner. I believe that today is the last day of SEC Media Days, but Coach Heupel, Big O, Cooper Mays, and Keenan Pili spoke for us yesterday up at the podium, but also with different various media outlets. And I listened to pretty much everything. I think it was everything that they had to say with everybody. So I have a lot that I took away from it. And, number one, I'll say this, there's a whole lot of buzz, at least with the expectations of our team, but also nationally. It sounds like there's a whole lot more confidence in our program heading into this 2024 season. And we will also be reacting to Coach Josh Heupel's sit down with Andy Staples. I think that there's a lot for us to take away from that. But as always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so before we get into the SEC Media Days, I want to remind everyone that four-star linebacker Christian Gass will be announcing his commitment on Saturday, July the 20th. And there's a whole lot of buzz surrounding our Tennessee Volunteers. It sounds like he is leaning towards our school. Now, he did say a couple of weeks ago, something like that he was going to be letting the coaching staff that he's going to be choosing know prior to his announcement. And it sounds and feels like he has already chose Tennessee. Now, we've said before that he could have been silently committed, but I think that things might kind of be official behind the scenes. But that's going to be one for us to look out for sure. And we are planning on going live for that one this Saturday. We hope that everyone will join us. We will let you know if we will be for sure on this channel, just like we always do. All right, now for my takeaways from SEC Media Days. Number one, okay, I think that the biggest word here is going to be confidence. Everyone that went up there and spoke up at the podium had a whole lot of confidence, starting off with Coach Heupel. He talked glowingly about both fronts. He said there's a whole lot of veteran depth on this team. And he also loves the additions of the players that we kind of added in to, kind of patch up some of those holes that we really, really needed coming from 2022 all the way to 23 and to today's date. I mean, seems like everything that was sort of a question mark in those two seasons, we've gotten that addressed. And, he talked about, man, look, this roster is the best that I've had since I've been up in Knoxville, and it's not even close. So a whole lot of confidence there. He said some great things about Nico and just the way that he was able to perform in the Citrus Bowl. I think that was really big for him just because, this is a guy that his first start is in a bowl game. So that's really, really big. So, I kind of took that away. But also, I think that he will be using the headsets on offense, something that we've been asking ourselves. We've talked about a lot on this channel. Will we be using those headsets? Now, I don't think that they'll be talking too much to Nico, but I do feel like he's going to do it just because him as a first-year starter, why not use him? It just makes the most sense. You can kind of help him. You can kind of help walk him through what you're seeing from a very veteran, perspective, and that should help us to kind of beat that learning curve that some people, I can't think of this guy's name, but the wide receiver that played at Florida, that's an SEC analyst, his biggest thing, I think maybe the only thing that he had to say about Tennessee was, number one, he said, oh, they've got a really weak schedule, so they should be good. But then he also said that he doesn't know how Nico is going to perform in his first season as a starter in the SEC gauntlet. And I mean, again, that guy's a hater, so he's going to do whatever he can to kind of give us some backhanded compliments. And of course, he has to go on to say that he feels like, yeah, Florida's got the toughest schedule in the country, but we're going to win 7 games. Well, they're projected to win like 4.5. They're going to be fighting to try to get bowl eligible. I think that they might win 5. Okay, I'll give them one more than what they're projected to win. But to say that they're going to win 7, y'all call me a homer on this channel sometimes, but that is a homer take. Okay, so that was a joke. Anyway, let's kind of flip the page onto what the players had to say. Number one, everyone keeps on talking about how good this defensive line is. And it's not just our team, it's not just our players. Even Cole Kublik said that our defensive line is number 1 in the SEC. And that's huge because there was another analyst up there that said that he also has our defensive line as number 1. Now, Cole Kublik's reasoning for this was our depth. But what people are missing out on is that it's not just the depth, but the high-end caliber talent that we have. And it ain't just James Pierce. From Leo to both of the D tackles to the strong side DN, we've got some guys that are going to have some breakout years this season. And then once you start to talk about that depth, then you'll see that there's not much of a drop-off. So I think that teams are going to have a big-time problem trying to block us, whether, they're running the ball or if they're passing. But please don't get into a deep down a distance trying to pass up against this defensive front, because it is going to be a problem. And it's not just because of that D-line, but also because of the second level. The linebackers, we'll talk a little bit about Keenan Pili. He said he loves that room. He also said some great things about our D-line. He was like, man, look, I couldn't wait to play this game and get straight to defense to see if our D-line is putting in work on the game like they do in real life. So that's big. But yeah, I think that there's a whole lot of athleticism on our defense, something else that Coach Heupel speaks about. He says, look, second and third level and, really even first level, whole lot of length, whole lot of athletes. and we are expecting to be much improved. And, if you kind of flip back to the other side and talk about Cooper Mays, this is a guy that has to block that great front on a day in and day out basis. If he's not actually practicing, then he's at least seen it. So he knows what the expectations are. He knows how good they are. And he said some great things about them as well. He also had some good things to say about Nico, and really everyone did. Talks about how he came in very humble. He went straight to work. He was asking a whole lot of questions, just eager and hungry to learn and to get better. So again, just kind of going back to Nico real quick, these are all the reasons that I feel like he's going to have a phenomenal season for us this year. But also, just getting back to the offensive line, right? Okay, we think that they're going to be very good. There are some question marks, and Cole Kublik ranked them as a number 4 unit in this league. I think that's a fair place for us to start just because the entire left side is unproven. Lance Hurd comes from what Cole Kublik called the number 1 offensive line in this league. He wasn't starting there, but he did get a good chance to play. Keep in mind, he was a true freshman last season, but he could come in and potentially be the best offensive lineman on this team from, game number 1, but we'll see what happens. Also, left guard is another position of question for us. It doesn't really matter who it is. I think we've got 2 or 3 really good options there. Either there's going to be some good veteran depth or it's going to be a younger guy with a very high ceiling. So we are deeper than people think up front. And again, those guys have to block the best, I believe, defensive front in the entire country, not just in the SEC. So iron sharpens iron, and I'm just expecting for us to have 2 at least top 3 fronts. And if we do on both sides of the football, then we're talking about how do we not make it to the playoffs based off of that, especially with the quarterback we feel like could end up being a generational type of talent that's doing all the right things off the field, again, very humble, all those sorts of things. And that's how a lot of these analysts tend to miss on some of these higher caliber players, because it does happen a lot. It's not about them not necessarily being able to evaluate how they look out on the field, even though we know that there is a whole lot of politics that goes into it. But I think that at the very, very top, it's hard to miss on these guys just from what they can do out on the field. It's more about what happens, whenever you are very highly touted, highly rated. What do you do from an off the field sort of perspective? But Nico kind of checks off all those boxes. So very excited about all that. And then, obviously Big O comes in talking about how good that defensive front is, says some good things about the rest of the team. And everyone kind of echoed these same sentiments that a national championship is what we are reaching for. Keenan Pili said, look, this group is special. You kind of hear Cooper Mays talking about it. So, and I mean, even, not in a very direct way, but even Coach Heupel is kind of saying those same things. So you have to have a whole lot of confidence because they are confident. And, everyone's going to kind of say the right things, or not everyone, but most people are going to come up to these SEC Media Days and say the right things. But the confidence in, the way that they're saying it is why I think that this team really is destined for greatness, as long as things can kind of bounce our way, because to win a national title, you do need for some things to bounce your way. You're going to need a little bit of luck. Everything has to come together perfectly. But I just feel like this is our year. I also really enjoyed the simple fact of Coach Heupel speaking about SEMO, up there at the plate whenever he's saying fight, in a World Series sort of a situation, and the way that he's kind of, relayed that message out to our team. And he says it seems like they can kind of pick it up a little bit better just because it's amongst their peers that they're seeing it from. And, just also hearing some of those players on our team talking about, man, look, seeing our players, in other sports, or seeing our teams in other sports going out and playing at a high level does feed us, and it gives us even more confidence. That's something else that we're speculating off of. I feel great about how this team is looking heading into fall camp, heading into the 2024 season. But let's go ahead and take a listen to Andy Staples and Coach Heupel.
We are here with Tennessee coach Josh Heupel, who you can't see it, but there is somebody playing the video game across from us.
It's in the background.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Josh's last night was like my weekend, where basically we spent our time getting our asses beat by our own kid at the college football video game.
Yeah, Tennessee versus Tennessee on the TV with my son. This Tennessee got crushed in the head-to-head battle.
Did he critique your play calling?
I didn't critique the play calling, questioned some of my decision-making.
Really?
Yeah. I played aggressive. A few onside kicks that didn't work out.
Sports talk shows locally, too? Or?
Yeah, he doesn't. He does not.
All right, I got to ask, so, since you drew the playbook, how's the playbook?
Well, I didn't draw that playbook. I did not draw that playbook.
I can put you in touch with the guy.
Yeah, probably need to get that done.
So
I'm going to pause it right there. Just one quick little takeaway, because I know a lot of people are very excited about EA Sports College Football 2025. And one of the things that we have been talking about on this channel kind of heading into this was, will the playbook be very similar to what Coach Heupel actually runs? Now, I knew that it would not be the exact playbook just because he keeps everything close to the vest when it comes to his offense, but I would say that it's a good kind of like video game version of our system, just as far as the splits and some of the route combinations, things like that. But I did kind of notice that whenever I was first playing, I was like, there's some stuff in here that Tennessee actually does in real life that's not in this game. And, hopefully, they'll try to update that some. But I just found that interesting for him to come out and say, hey, this is not my playbook. This is a video game version of it.
What did you think, though? As you and I are about the same age. Yeah. Did you ever think a video game would look like that?
No, it's unbelievable how far it's come from the original version that used to play.
Yeah.
It's cool for college football fans to be able to have that game back.
Well, there's so many kids that are like, my favorite player to play with is James Pierce or is Nico. Like that's the crazy part that I never thought about until just this year. Like, and I played as James Pierce the first night I had it, and I was like, oh wow.
How'd you do?
So my son was tired of beating me. So he's like, you play as Tennessee, I'll play as Hawaii. James Pierce had 3 sacks in the first 2 series.
Yeah,
and then
that's a good
then my
start.
son rage quit.
We need to get him off to that kind of start this fall too.
Exactly. All right, well, I'm glad we mentioned this. We got to talk about.
All right, so before they start to get into more of the actual football stuff, I just want to say this real quick for anyone who does want to play this game and it has not played. James Pierce is pretty much unstoppable on that game. We've got a whole lot of players on there that might not be necessarily starting, but man, if you go through that depth chart and if you kind of mix and match some of those pieces, yeah, James Pierce is ridiculous on that game, which is going to be great for us just because I'm telling you, these young players, these young people, period, they're going to be paying attention to how each team looks and all that. And it also sounds and feels like a lot of people want to play with Tennessee's offense, which is exactly what we expected coming into this. So that just helps with the cachet. It helps a whole lot with our brand. And I'm telling you, moving forward, I think that we'll see some of it next season, but kind of on down the line, 2 to 3 years. And we're talking about some players that might be young in high school that are going to be playing this game a lot more. And they're going to put Tennessee up in their top just based off of this video game. As silly as that might sound, it's very, very true.
About your defense, because this is as deep as I can remember of a D-line that Tennessee's had in years. You get Keenan Peely back. You'd hope to have him last year. You lose him right before the season. How excited are you about that group?
I really am excited about defense, who we have in the building, but what Coach Banks and our defensive staff have done over the first 3 years, nothing short of remarkable. There's a lot of areas that we need to get better at too, and I get all that, but you go back to when we first got here, all the things that we had to navigate, players lost with the reductions that we had to take. Our best is still way out in front of us. This is the deepest that we've been. But length, athleticism up front, short area quickness, block destruction, second level, athleticism on the third level. Really excited to get in training camp, grow with these guys, and go play.
And this is something I've talked to a lot of coaches who are offensive guys, and it feels.
I'm going to pause it real quick right here, y'all. But I love hearing Coach Hype talk football. If there's any real football people on this channel, y'all will know exactly what I'm talking about. He is a football guy through and through. You can tell he's just very comfortable talking about it. But this is, I want to say that this might be the first time that I've really heard him speaking on what he, kind of came into up here in Knoxville, at Tennessee. He inherited a big old mess, but now that he's being more vocal about, hey, look, this is what we came in with. And it's almost like he's looking back on it in hindsight and he's proud of what they've done. And I think that he most definitely should be. That's just kind of goes back to the confidence thing that we were just talking about. Very, very confident. And you could tell that he thinks that this team can win the whole doggone thing.
It's like, it's hard culturally when you run an up-tempo offense.
Don't paint me that way as an offensive guy.
That's why I was going to ask you that. Yeah. That's why I was going to ask you that, because you haven't done that. You get to Tennessee, you find out you have more athletic offensive linemen, you add more physicality to the run game. Defensively, you clearly want to be dominant on defense. Yeah. But how do you do that? How do you practice that way?
Well, look at statistically, yards per carry defensively, led the league last year. Tackles for loss, sacks, top 2 over the last 2 years in all those categories. Turnovers. There's so many things that we've done well. Now there's more out there for us to go take, but for us, we want to be dominant, not just good, but dominant on the defensive side of the ball. That is the standard of Tennessee
Yeah.
football. Al Wilson, Reggie White, like
Absolutely.
they're echoing through Neyland Stadium
That's
right
right.
now as we speak.
John
And
Henderson,
that's
Albert
right,
Haynes,
Big
yeah.
John, right? But for us in our structure, what we do in our practices, maintaining balance, not playing with tempo, formation, shift, trade, motions, so that they have to communicate through that, chase the football. When do we do our tempo period? Why are we doing it? How do we do it the right way for all phases? Those are things that we've continued, and I've continued to get better at during the duration of my
It just
my
seems
head
like
coaching
such a
career.
hard balance to strike. And I know Brent Venables is here today, too.
All right, so I'm gonna pause it right there. But I love that just because it's something that we've also talked about on this channel. How much, is the defense having to see a constant tempo going up against this offense in practice? And it sounds like, see, this is a big part of the reason that it's good to have good depth on your team, because you can run a real scout team. You could have guys that, might not be getting in the game on Saturdays, come out there, run a scout for you. And it's not going to have to be that tempo. They're just going to be running some other team's offense. So I think that that's big, that he just talks about, hey, look, sometimes we're going to be going tempo versus our defense. Sometimes we won't. But it's also a good thing to have a defense that's used to going up against tempo. It just means that whenever we play up against teams like that, we're going to be better prepared for it. So I'm hearing a whole lot of great things right here from Coach Heupel. I'm definitely getting fired up.
And he and Dabo pulled it off when they were together at Clemson, where you could actually have a tempo offense, have a dominant defense. It's not impossible.
Yeah, you look at possessions per game where we rank within the league. It would shock everybody that's watching the show, and that happens. You got to understand situational football. You got to control the ball when it needs to be controlled. All those things are a part of it.
So speaking of that, you've got a new quarterback coming in. How valuable was Nico being able to start that bowl game and you getting that period of practice, kind of extra spring practice with him?
Hugely, vitally important to the continued growth of him this offseason. The experience of knowing you're going to be the guy, completely different than just getting thrown into the game.
Yeah.
Owning the preparation from the video to the practice field, the time on task with the other 10 guys, then that creating the urgency that you need in the offseason. And he's had a great offseason. Really excited to get into training camp with him.
And it feels like Iowa's kind of the perfect defense to test him against, because they're not going to give you anything easy. They're going to always be in the right. And it felt like he didn't try too hard in that game.
He played within himself. One of the best compliments you can give a quarterback is from practice to the game doesn't speed up. It slowed down for him. He was in complete control. There's some things and outcomes on plays that he would want differently, but that's why he practiced and continued to grow.
So,
all right, so pausing it right here. A couple of takeaways, right? So just in Coach Heupel talking about Nico, Andy Staples kind of talking about that Iowa game being a perfect situation. I think so too. I just think that that's a defense that was really good on paper, very fundamentally sound, but at the same time, you kind of have the athletes around you that should give you a little bit more success versus a team that's built the way that Iowa's defense was. And, I think that it's just a perfect place, just because also it's a bowl game. It's his first start in a bowl game. It was his first start period, but getting your first start in a bowl game, I think, was huge. And, back to Coach Heupel's point, I think that Nico it did look like the game just kind of slowed down for him. It looked like he was almost playing on a video game or playing versus I wouldn't necessarily say like lesser talented people, but it was something like that, right? It was almost like, a high school senior playing up against maybe like JV team. It was along those lines, and that's huge. I think that gave him a whole lot of confidence heading into the off season, and also back to Coach Heupel's points about the preparation on and off the field. I think that, it just got him to a point of saying, okay, I already felt like I was a really good player. Everyone keeps on telling me that, a whole lot of high expectations. But now I'm seeing that I can actually do it. And that confidence, man, in sports, and I think just in life in general, is so, so important. So that's a big part of the reason I think that Nico will come out this year and have success immediately, just because of that game, those moments, what he did there. And again, just the belief that he has with his coaching staff, with his teammates, and with our entire fan base.
expectations obviously very high this year. You've dealt with that now. How do you deal with it within the team when you're talking to those guys? Because having lived in Knoxville, I don't know that there's a place in the country that is more intense when it comes to how everybody feels about the football team, and where everywhere you go, it is okay. You guys gonna do it this year? How do you have them deal with that?
That's just the way you want it.
Yeah,
that's why you come to Rocky Top.
That's
they
right,
do
baby.
care. 365 days out of the year. The expectations outside of the building are never going to be higher than what they are inside of our room.
Yeah.
And our guys, in today's landscape, you don't block out the noise, but you can be intentional on what you live in your headspace versus moving it out of your headspace. And for us, this group has been really good at how intentional they are in their work habits every single day. On the practice field during spring ball, in the weight room, just the consistency of it. And that's where success lies. You have long-term goals, dreams, visions, where you want to get to. Comes down to being where your feet are and winning that moment.
The other thing I've noticed, especially talking to your players versus talking to some of the other players around.
I'm also say this real quick, just because Coach Heupel said being where your feet are. I think every single player, like all three of the guys that came up, talked about that. They said, yeah, we're going to be where our feet are. They said that several times. So I know that that's something that Coach Heupel has been preaching to this entire, team. And I think that that's really big, just because you have to be able to be in the moment. And that's how you can kind of stay within yourself, is by just being where you are right now, controlling what you can control in these moments. So, I mean, every single box, like, listen, if I'm a parent of a player that's going up, or, that's trying to decide on the school, everything that I'm seeing and hearing from Coach Heupel, from all these players, this is where you want to go, just because they're, checking off every single box that I feel like you would have.
You guys kind of let your players let their personalities fly, and you give them a little more freedom. But it's interesting because coaches usually don't want to do that. What is the decision-making process behind that, and how does it work?
Yeah, control the controllables.
Yeah.
Monitor and care about things that actually impact who they are and their success on the field.
Yep.
And then you gotta let them be themselves too. And if you're not, you run dry as a human being, and you run dry as a football player. You got to embrace, but you got to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And my playing experience, I think, is a big part of why I view it that way. I let the players pick the things that I don't think have any indication on whether we're winning or losing. Let them have fun and enjoy the journey.
And you were a very tight-knit Oklahoma team, it seems like, because I know people who got in, into that group, and it feels like, and they're still tight. Everybody seems very, like that was a group that loved each other.
Yeah.
How much does that matter when you're trying to win a national championship?
Talent is one thing, but you got to be connected. You got to care about the people around you. You got to be committed to each other. That's what we are still building in our room.
Yeah.
But what we have built too, and it's an ongoing process, day by day, and today.
So I'm gonna pause it real quick, just because that was probably like the only negative sort of a thing that I heard from Coach Heupel, saying that they're still trying to build, I guess, like, caring about one another inside of the locker room. And I don't want to make a huge deal about this, because I don't think that it is a big deal, but it is something to kind of keep a close eye out on, especially in a season where you want to win that national title. We'll see what happens, in fall camp. Everyone should be able to gel together a little bit better. But there's so many players that have been here for such a long time, that have played together for such a long time, that I feel like it shouldn't be that much of an issue. But we do have a few players that have transferred in, and that's the biggest thing to try to navigate in today's football with the way that our team is built, is how do the players that have been here, how do they kind of gel and mesh with these new personalities and all that? And I'm sure that the coaching staff is pre-screening that, but you never really know what's going to happen until it's a day in and day out basis. But this is the time, though. This is really why, not to go off too far on a tangent, but this is why, I think it's good to have those two-a-days and all that, because that's where that real brotherhood and all that type of stuff is built at, because you're just grinding all day, every day with these same people. Like, you see them, you're with them 24 hours a day. But we don't really have that now. But, I would say that, again, fall camp is going to be the closest thing to it. And hopefully everyone will kind of be completely bought in. We can all kind of, mesh together and have that brotherhood heading into the season. That's going to be very, very critical to this team. That's something that we can't gauge necessarily from the outside in. So I just want to point that out.
Hey, picking three guys to come up here and represent them, it was really tough. There's a bunch of guys. And I think that speaks to the culture that we have in
we've
our locker
hatched
room.
a plan. By the way, Cooper Mays helped me come up with this, but then Amari has seconded it. Elijah Simmons,
Yeah.
you're one of your D tackles.
Yeah.
Voice of an angel.
He does have a voice
So-
of an angel.
We're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
do we think we could make opposing offensive lineman false start if he starts just singing a Boyz II Men song pre-snap?
Yeah, that might work. You know,
I mean, Michigan apparently, allegedly, had the guy who could fake the clap with his tongue.
Oh,
so
geez.
it's not illegal.
Yeah.
It's legal. But, I mean, that's definitely not illegal to sing to them.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. We'll work on that with Big E during training
Well,
camp.
Rodney Garner, I'm sure, will be thrilled to hear about that. So.
Rodney would love that.
All right, so a whole lot to take away from the conversation with Andy Staples and Coach Heupel. But my biggest thing, again, y'all, is about the confidence level of our program heading into fall camp and heading into the season. I think that the sky is the limit. Y'all let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.